conference web page. So we just started, and by saying this, I wish you a nice session, and I'm handing over to Jordi. Jordi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vlado. So I want to welcome everybody today to this session on Inspire reference data, which is called Ready to Take Off as a question, because as you know, we are approaching the deadline for providing Inspire compliant data, not only reference data. Every theme in the Inspire directive shall to be provided according the interoperable models. So this date is really approaching, and we propose this session on reference data from the Inspire Community Forum, which, as you know, is trying to support implementers in the process of sharing experiences, reporting issues, and providing solutions for the problems identified. And we thought that it would be a good idea to have a general session just providing some key inspiring implementation experiences that may show you maybe possible paths for the process, and not also implementation experience from implementers, but also a wide range of selected tools that could be used, software tools that could be used for the implementation. I think we have a very nice set of speakers today with us. And at the end of the session, we also have a presentation on an Inspire use case as an example of the potential of Inspire data and the Inspire reference data as a whole. So just I would like to give the floor to Anya if she may add something else to my words. Anya?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Anja Hofschak, and I'm the facilitator of the Inspire Thematic Cluster for Topographic and Cadastral Reference Data. And as Jordi said, we are collecting in the Inspire Community Forum questions, issues, but also solutions for the implementation of Inspire for several Annex 1 and Annex 2 themes. And in this session, we have combined experience, but also interesting information on software and tools, and in a third part, an use case. We are going to collect some information on Slido. So we would like to get more information about the status of the implementation of Inspire reference data across Europe. And we have prepared some questions that are either multiple choice or text poll. So please go to Slido and fill in the survey. It is open throughout the session. And at the end of the session, we will look at the results. We don't have time for a long discussion, but we can discuss any questions further in the Inspire Community Forum. So I give back to Jordi for the session. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Anya. So as Anya said, we are running as facilitators of different groups of the Inspire Forum. So Anya is for reference and cadastral reference data. My role is on elevation and orthoimagery, which are the teams that are completing the reference data list, and also running as a software and tools group in the forum. So Vlado, is it possible to change to the Slido poll? Start it.
Yes, I see that Slido poll is already on. Do you want me
Yes.
to show it, or Anya, or?
I can show it.
Yeah.
I hope you can see it. Jody, can you see the Slido?
Yes.
So we have prepared the survey with several questions. The first one is, of course, we want to know from which country you are, and you are answering questions for this country.
Maybe. Okay, thank you. If you can, you can put it full screen, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So the first question is, we want to learn about the status of Inspire reference data implementation in your country. So a little bit your opinion. Jordi, for you, the next question.
Okay. Next question is, which are in your view, the main obstacles in the provision of Inspire reference data in your country? So you have here different options that you can choose the one that is more related to your opinion.
Then we want to learn about any potential new ways for improving the provision of Inspire data. So any ideas are welcome. And if you have an idea, you can briefly describe it.
And also we are willing to give you the floor to highlight any relevant Inspire reference data, network services or applications, examples that you consider as a good practice and that could be nice to share with the community. And if so, please provide a URL for accessing this information.
Then it would be nice if you can highlight fields of application and real use cases of Inspire reference data, if you have them. This is the last question in the poll. So we are looking forward to your ideas and suggestions. Thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen and give back to Jordi.
Yes. Okay, so the Slido poll will be open during all the session to give you time for thinking while we are running the different presentations. And our first section today is about the best practices and key inspiring data implementation experiences. We have two speakers there. The first speaker is Thierry Smith from the EmotNet bathymetry community, and he will show us their experience on Inspire compliance for bathymetric data. So, Gary, I will stop sharing, and maybe if you are willing to.
Is it all right? Can you see my present? Well, the headline of my presentation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm Thierry Schmidt. I'm indeed a member of the EmotNet bathymetry community, and I'm working for the French Hydrographic Service. And well, during the next 10 minutes or so, we will get a little bit wet for a start, because we are going to speak about our implementation INSPIRE directive for seabed mapping for bathymetric data. So I'm giving this presentation on behalf of the EMONET bathymetry, or the EMONET high resolution seabed mapping consortium, which is a group of nearly 40 organizations widespread over Europe, and which have in common to share a data set of bathymetric data set. So what you can see, just briefly as an introduction, what you can see on the slide is the current coverage of bathymetric information that globally, but more especially around Europe, we have had access so far. Okay, so just a small introduction about EMONET bathymetry. EMONET bathymetry is part of EMONET, which stands for European Marine Observation and Data Network, which basically is an initiative of the European Commission, the DG Mare, essentially, which aims to bring together data set distributed around in different organizations around Europe, and that's for different themes. You can see those themes, and we are obviously going to focus more on bathymetry. And so our main target for EMONET bathymetry is to bring together bathymetric data of European seas, engage data contributors to share their data with respect to their national data policy also, and publish and serve interoperable data and metadata, and also generate harmonized digital elevation model at nearly 100 meters resolution. I'm going to show those items to you now. So what you can, if you visit the EMONET bathymetry portal, here are the different things that you can find. Well, basically, that I would say you can find two different things. The first one is the access of the access to the metadata of all the data set of this different organization data set, I would say metadata of this surveys, bathymetric surveys made by these different organizations. And basically, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but those two screenshots are basically showing here the access to the survey, and also we also are are also making an inventory of already gridded product in Europe, and that's what you can find here. And the last product, the last item that you can find easily on EMONET bathymetry portal is the digital elevation model, which is basically an aggregation of the different data set and the inventory of these different data sets made from those two previous points. I'm just now gonna speak a little bit of the inventory of the bathymetric data, I would say the catalog of surveys that you can find on the Emonet portal. Well, basically, you can find on this image, you can see these polygons and polylines, which are all individually describing individual bathymetric surveys. For each of these polygon and polylines, you've got a relation to an XML file with all the description of the main information related to this data set. Obviously, these metadata are they are basically ISO 19115 and 19139 compliant. That is basically based on INSPIRE recommendation. And I must say that we are, of course, those are INSPIRE compliant. These metadata, they are INSPIRE compliant, and we have also developed a thematic vocabulary, which is also INSPIRE compliant, but which helps better describing our bathymetric data set. Through the metadata, you can find different characteristics of the survey, and one important characteristic is the organization that holds the data set. The system allows any user to get in correspondence with the data holder to access the highest resolution of the product through a system of through a kind of I would say basket like product. You can ask for different data set at the best resolution, at the native resolution of the surveys, and the data provider, knowing what will be the usage of the data set, is able to either communicate straight the data, or ask for any license agreement, or even refuse if the use is not coherent with the national policy that each state has. So I would say that it allows users and data providers to find a good agreement on the use of the highest resolution of the data. In order to have also a product that is accessible and free of any constraints, we have also developed, we've also aggregated all the data, all the bathymetric data into this digital elevation model, which is at 115 meter resolution. And basically this resolution is a common agreement in between all the different national policies in terms of resolution of access of data, because for some countries the bathymetric data might be a little bit sensitive. In order to build this DTM, basically, there are 3 levels. We are asking data provider to sample their data at the target resolution of 115 meter resolution. And second, we for different area, we have defined basin coordinators, which are aggregating within the basin the different data set, and might contact the data providers if there are issues in between the data sets. And the last stage is the integration of all these different basins all together in a unified DTM, which is then deployed on the web portal.
Thierry?
Yes.
1 minute, more or less.
Yeah. What I would say is that we've got a methodology that unify all this information easily, and all of this, either the production of metadata and the production of the DTM is supported by dedicated software that all the data providers and all the people in the consortium have access to. All the products that we are developing are OGC compliant, and that enables us to share them easily, either the metadata or the DTM. And in terms of conclusion, as you can see, basically we are through the EMONET bathymetry, we've facilitated the access and the use of bathymetric data. We aggregate in a unified way data sources coming from diverse organizations. In some ways, we are improving ocean data literacy by providing discovery and access to basic information that is bathymetry. And we respect both the data providers and the users. And I can just invite you to go and visit our website during the now or later. That's all for me.
So thank you very much, Thierry. This really interesting presentation. We will be having any questions at the end. So if you have any questions from Thierry, please do it through the Slido or even in the chat. But it's preferred to use the Slido. So now I will be showing our next presenter. Who is Josefina Saez and Marta Kudinax, which will be presenting the INSPIRE directive in the local administration. So sorry. So hope you are looking at the presentation, and Josefina, the floor is yours.
Okay, good. Thank you, Jordi. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Very well. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Josefina Saez. I'm from Diputació de Barcelona in Catalonia, Spain, and I will present you the INSPIRE directive in the local administration. How do we organize in Barcelona Provincial Council to comply with INSPIRE? An overview of our experience about INSPIRE implementation. Next, Jordi. I will introduce first our geographical environment. Where are we and what do we do? The province of Barcelona is the most populated in Catalonia region, with Barcelona city as the capital. It has 311 municipalities, of which about 80% have less than 20,000 inhabitants. Barcelona Provincial Council is the government of the province, and its principal aim is to provide support to the small-sized municipalities. Specifically, our GIS department helps them to manage and plan territory and provides technical support by creating, maintaining, and evolving a customized GIS system and its SDI platform. Next, please. Nowadays, our goal is to comply with Inspire in October 2020. How do we organize? We work step by step. Next, please. On the first step, we selected any theme that local administration requires in the exercise of their competence. So, this requires a study of current legislation to choose these 12 thematic areas highlighted in red. Next, please. The second step was to bring together all the departments related on these themes, explain them the purpose of Inspire, and ask for their involvement. Each department designate a partner. Next, please. In the third step, we work with datasets that can be transformed. We make a table with a list of our geographical information sets, our internal classification theme, the department involved, and finally, the associated Inspire theme. Next, please. Next, Jordi. Next. Thank you. Wait. No. Preview. Preview.
Step 4.
No, preview. It's okay. No. The next.
Yes.
Thank you very much. The next step was to implement mapping tables. I mean, we need to make the equivalency tables between Inspire and our attributes. So we select the classes involved with our themes, we design tables based on Inspire templates, and adapt them to make transformation attributes as easy as possible. Next, please. Okay, and also the same with the code lists. Next, please. Then we review the results with each department partner and make the last adjustments. Next, please. Finally, we design the implement transformation processes. Nowadays, we have done some ones related with addresses, production and industrial facilities, utility and governmental services, and natural reasons. Next, please. Well, now Marta Codinax will explain you how do we transform and publish our datasets.
Okay, thank you, Fina, and good morning, everybody. Well, we had the following requirements for this process. It had to be enabled to automate it, easy to maintain, all in one process, suitable for all datasets, easy to keep data up to date, and for multiple formats. Next, please. The first step on this process is always to generate the mapping table for each dataset. Next, please. The second step is the transformation, which consists on reading datasets from our Oracle locator database, joining and merging them with other related data, convert our attributes to the Inspire ones, and populate them with code lists. And we do this step by using the FME Inspire solution pack. And finally, to validate the output file. Next, please. And the last step on this process is to automate it to be executed once a week based on our metadata catalog service. On one hand, we generate the general XML item feed service, but also we generate the XML service for each municipality. Also, we generate all the zip files, which contain the GML files for each municipality that has changed its data during that week. And this is how we keep the files up to date. Next, please. And now, at the last part of this presentation, we would like to share with you 6 issues we had considered during the development of this process. The issue number 1 is about the coordinate reference system. As you know, Inspire Atom Fit requires a specific one, but the official in Catalonia is different. By the way, be careful with the order of the coordinates, depending on the system. And some specific formats can have their own requirements, like it happens with GeoJSON, for example. Next, please. The second issue is related to formats. Inspire Atom Fit requires GML format when you don't have any other official alternative one. But we look for alternative flattened encodings, which are much easier to GIS clients to be used and processed. And we found the GeoJSON alternative format on InspireMIF GitHub repository. We did some tests with that, and we reported some minor errors on the address model mapping. And here you can see some examples. Next, please.
5 minutes, Marta.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
This is a building name address example. Next, please. This is a case with address number and thoroughfare name. Next, please. And finally, you can see an example of reading the GeoJSON file directly to QGIS. And it was really great because it was very, very easy. Next, please. And of course, after the good experience with the GeoJSON format, we are now looking forward to a GeoPackage encoding rule document. Next, please. The third issue is connected with unique identifiers. We have no official rule in Catalonia yet, so we defined a suitable set of identifiers based on a hierarchical codification with SPA for Spain, DV for Diputació de Barcelona, and the acronym for the dataset. In this case, it was address. Next, please. Issue number 4. The address representation in GML addresses could be very useful to visualize the compound address on the map as a label, but it's not a GML feature, so it cannot be included in the output GML file. And our solution was to use the address identifier general to hold the compound address. Next, please. Issue number 5. There's no specification about the order of the address extensions components for GML. Thus, it's not possible to know to which component an extension is assigned to. So we cannot, and we cannot use the address number to label the compound address, as it is defined as a number type. So it's not possible to use it. Next, please. So how we solve it? Well, we applied a visual solution forcing the order when writing to the GML file, but it's only a visual solution. And again, we use the address identifier general for the compound address. Next, please. And finally, the last issue to be shared with you is about the same problem with the compound address, but for GeoJSON format. In this case, the model mapping editors suggested us to use the address number for compound addresses as it's of type string. And that was a very easy and yes, very easy solution for us and practical. And the reason of the editors for that suggestion was that the intent behind the GeoJSON encoding is to create a flattened structure without using complex properties, as these have very limited support in a lot of client software. And it's true, it was very easy for us to read the GeoJSON file directly with the JS client. Next, please.
1 minute, Marta.
Yeah, yes, okay, it's, well,
Okay.
I have already finished, and please be inspired, and thank you for your time.
Very nice, and thank you for keeping on the time very well.
Thank you.
So thank you both speakers, Josefina and Marta, and for the audience, if you have any questions, so just put it on the slide or in the chat for revising them at the end of the session. And now we are going to our next speaker. So I will stop sharing. And Thorsten, and you have the role of presenter.
I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, so we are now entering in section 2. It's the software and tools for delivering Inspire data and services, and our first speaker is Thorsten. Thorsten, your floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jody. Yeah, also for the invitation to this session on Inspire reference data. Yeah, when we founded WeTransform about 5 years ago, we were really unhappy about kind of what the overall state was in terms of how software supported implementing Inspire. Basically, you needed a lot of special knowledge, you needed a lot of expert tools. The user experience often wasn't great. I remember talking to one of the bigger software providers at the time, and they said that, well, Inspire is this little thing, it's just not worth really investing into the user experience of that. And we said, okay, we're going to look critically at why that's the case, and can't we do something better than that, given that I had, as a researcher and so on, already been involved with Inspire for close to 10 years. I was of the firm opinion that we could do quite a bit better than what was the state at that point. Now it's about 5 years later. I'm almost, or exactly 5 years in WeTransform now. And in March, we crossed the border of about 5,000 data sets being published through the various platforms that we offer. And yeah, I wanted to give a little bit of a short presentation on where we stand and where we want to go in the next years. So first of all, what was our vision? We really thought that one of the key problems that we saw was that people typically start with setting up some, let's say, instance of a server or something, but don't really a whole platform. So you start with one building block, like, for example, you think about publishing and the service configuration, so you check that. Then later you realize that you also need to have a process to keep the metadata up to date, for example. A bit later you realize that Inspire has this quality of service requirements, so you also need to monitor that, and you need to have failover. You want to make sure that you can recover quickly from an issue, and so on. So there's quite a lot of things that are typically added one by one. We, of course, also have the whole topic of data harmonization. Often we discuss making data accessible as one step. That's already a big value. But also the harmonization, i.e. transforming the data to the data specification, is something that typically can create quite a lot of effort. So that's basically where we come from, making that a bit simpler, providing Hail Studio as an accessible open source tool to enable anybody to a bit easier transform the data to comply to Inspire. That was a large part. But also one thing that we do a lot is that we enable our users to share and collaborate more effectively on that. So for example, on our Hail Connect platform, there are currently more than 300 public transformation projects that you can just access and download and use in Hail Studio and get started, for example, to see how others created address data sets or any other kind of theme that you have in Inspire. There's more aspects to it, like integrating existing resources well, modeling, i.e., for example, metadata profiles, creating Inspire extensions, and so on. So basically, we saw that all of these things are necessary for a full integrated end-to-end platform. Yeah, and we're now pretty close to having implemented all of that. I mean, there's still some gaps, but all in all, we have a fully fledged platform around. And yeah, it is relatively easy to use. So our experience, I must say, is that our goal was that even somebody who doesn't have Inspire expertise can really use it. Of course, there are still a couple of things that are not that easy to manage, especially when you don't implement like a core workflow. That's something I'm going to refer to later as well again. But if you have a lot of variance in your data or your workflow. It was also very important for us to not just be Inspire compliant and get that green check mark for our customers, but also to really have a platform that is ready for new applications. So obviously a very important thing nowadays is that we consider Inspire data to be a really great basis for artificial intelligence applications. So we implement more and more tools that basically enable us to quickly transform Inspire data into data that can be readily used in various types of artificial intelligence applications. We've also focused quite a bit of our work on providing new interaction approaches, since we think that actually that the richness of the Inspire models is something that can be properly exploited if you don't always just look at the map, but rather at thinking how you can use link data and graph data approaches in the user interface. And of course, we also always focused on making the data itself more useful. And we've just heard that things like GeoJSON and GeoPackage can make data much more useful to specific use cases like WebGIS or desktop GIS. This also includes things like extended models and the simplified views. So basically having something like for the addresses, I think that's really obvious. An address is in principle not that complex an object, but it's really hard to use in the way that it's specified in Inspire. Yeah, then we are also adding more and more features that basically enable data ecosystems, but that's maybe a topic for next year's conference then. Another aspect that's becoming more and more important is that you also, even if you want to go to an environment like ours, is that you don't just want to be locked into a cloud environment. So from the beginning on, we developed the software in such a way that anybody could switch from any type of deployment to another one, like changing the server that it's running on, but also changing other aspects. We also don't want to lock in any data. So there are features available with which you can export everything, all your organization's data as a big archive, all the metadata, all the original data, all the transform data, and so on. And we've also applied these principles that we want to really make it an open platform in various other parts, like, for example, the fact that all components use open APIs that you can access, you can integrate against in any way that you want. On the other hand, it's also important that, of course, your data is protected and so that the software and the platform itself are secured. So, for example, we do security audits and pen trace testing every year. And finally, also as a kind of measure of trust and so on, we also follow, even with Hail Connect, which is not an open source application, we follow a source code available model. So if you want to inspect the source code, if you want to make sure that it's secure, etc., that's something you can always do. And you can actually get beyond that, you can get a source code editing license, so you wouldn't depend on us for any further development either. The image on the right hand refers to the Gaia X technical architecture. Some of you might have heard of that. So that's kind of the European answer to the hyperscalers like AWS and Google and so on, which is going to be more of a distributed model, which will make it easier to also migrate from one cloud to another. Like if you decide that, for example, you have a Spanish provider or an Italian or something who complies to that, it will be very easy to have an application directly running there. That brings me also to, that brings me also to the deployment options. So for Hail Connect, we currently operate 3 types of deployments. There's public cloud, which most of the customers are using, and for about 45% of the data sets. There are private cloud setups of the software, where, for example, customization is possible, but we still host and manage everything. That's only being used by a small set of customers, but it's actually the area where most data sets already are and where there's massive growth. We're seeing more than 1,000 data sets growth in that area per month right now. And finally, there's on-premise. So that's basically more for experienced data center owners who want to operate the software themselves. Yeah, I mentioned before that there is this core process that we recommend for implementing Inspire really at scale and in an efficient way. And usually the best way to start is actually to perform local harmonization. Like, let's say all the municipalities in a country actually use a simple core national model that they can easily transform their data to. This can be a bunch of shapefiles or tables or something else. The core is that it's a really simple model, but the transformation is also easy for them to manage. Then you can actually automate the transformation to Inspire very easily. So you let it being done by one expert once, and everybody can effectively use that. You should also generate the metadata as far as possible. Don't edit it by hand, maybe except editing an abstract. Otherwise, it can usually be generated very well and will then be kept up to date automatically. It's also important that the publishing itself is done automatically. So we keep seeing people who spend a lot of time in the step, like doing their degree mapping or other tasks that are necessary to get this really to work well and deliver valid XML at the end. But this is usually something that for 99.5% of cases can be automated well. And finally, validation also has to be kept tightly in the loop. So you want to know whether all of that process actually works and retains and gets the green check mark in the end. And for us, the record, and I did something similar last week in our Wednesday presentation for going through that whole process, is something like 12 minutes. Now, to be honest, most processes, most data sets take between 1 and 3 days to go through that process, but it's still quite an effective way. And whenever using our platform, you change the process a lot, of course, time can go up. Like, for example, if you have pre-existing metadata that you want to reuse, there's typically a bit more tweaking required so that it complies to the current rules. Yeah, the other thing that we see after, let's say, 5 years of offering that is that there's really quite a bit of difference between the two main options that we see. So one is that you do say, okay, I'm going to go with this kind of software as a service, however, it's going to be deployed, finished product, or with a custom solution that you build out step by step. And yeah, I'm not going to read all of these points. I just want to point out 2 or 3 things. The first one is that I think a lot of people basically start with the right-hand column, and then at some point they realize it's quite a bit of effort. And just something we heard about 2 weeks ago from one of the people we talked to was this: if we were to start again, we would definitely use Hail Connect. So I guess that the overall effort is often underestimated when starting out building something like the right-hand column in many aspects. Like, for example, the fact that if you have a one-off system, you're going to pay for all the maintenance efforts by yourselves in either direct or indirect. Another big difference is also how long does it take you to get that ready? Yeah? You need to first come up with the requirements that you have. You need to procure it, develop, and deploy it, which typically takes quite long. Compared to a software as a service solution, which is basically immediately ready. So you can get started in a few minutes. Yeah, there's of course some speed spots for custom solutions as well. So there's no question about that. And I've been talking about that in other presentations quite a few times. But it's often a bit hard to predict where these are. So our recommendation is actually to start with a more or less standard solution and then later see if that works or not.
1 minute.
Yeah, one thing, yeah, that should be manageable. Thanks. So one thing is, of course, that for us also, it's really critical to achieve a certain critical customer mass. So the way that we are approaching that when developing a software as a service solution only really makes sense if we achieve a certain scale. This year we are getting a lot of municipalities. So this is this medium blue color here is municipalities that are coming on board. But still we're about 75% there. So there's still a bit to be done also on the scaling the business side. Yeah, that's just 1 or 2 things. Of course, managing that many data sets and that many different users is also quite a challenge. So there are still things where, yeah, data sets basically fall outside of the boundary of what we support. Like, oops, didn't realize that data set was that big, unzipped, and so on. So where we run into problems. So naturally, not everything is always perfect. Yeah, it is quite a big challenge to manage these many different orgs and users. But of course, the knowledge is encoded always in tools and fixes, so it always gets more robust what we're providing. And the last slide I want to do is I want to really encourage you to try out our system in a proof of concept. If you're still looking around how to solve Inspire for you, at least take that into account. Do a proof of concept with us. That's usually done with very little effort. Yeah, the feedback that we're getting is like the one that we see above. Yeah, that's also from somebody who went through that. That it normally took them 2 weeks to go from source data to download service, and in the proof of concept, they were able to do it in 70 minutes. We typically then transition into a pilot phase. That means you utilize it at a smaller scale before you go to a full-scale operations phase, where you also decide on the final deployment that you want to use. Yeah, so that's basically what I wanted to present about today. It's a very, very short form, of course, for, let's say, a platform that's quite capable by now. I just want to invite you, whenever you think about providing reference data to a stable Inspire structure, to think really about the long term. How are you going to maintain your solution? How you're going to keep it up to date and compliant and so on? And to really think about whether using a product like this wouldn't be, make your life much easier. That's it from my side.
Okay, thank you, Torsten. So it's really interesting presentation, and I think it's one of the most useful applications for make our lives easier in Inspire transformation process. So, and especially for organizations with little resources. So now I will present next presenter. So our next presenter is Nuno Oliveira.
Hello.
Which will be presenting Inspire services with GeoServer and Hail, where we are. Nuno, do you want to present your slides?
Yes. Hello, good morning. Sharing my screen. Should be able to see it. Okay. I guess I can start. Can you hear me well, Jordi?
Yes.
Very good.
I cannot see the presentation at the moment.
Interesting. Yes, someone shared the screen, so stole my screen. Let me share it again. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Very good. Okay.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone. I am Nuno Oliveira, and I will be the one doing this presentation, which will be a bit to look at GeoServer, where we are in terms of Inspire compliancy, or rephrasing which Inspire compliant services we can implement with GeoServer, present some real use cases we have. And by real, I mean that from use cases that already did all the mapping, are publishing the data, but also have external applications that are built portals that are building integrations on top of that Inspire published data. And then I will also provide a bit of an overview about the next steps, because there is a lot of things going on. So new output formats, new STI platforms to publish Inspire. So we'll have a look at all of these things. A bit of presentation first. So I work for GeoSolutions. I'm actually a developer of GeoServer. And well, we are a company that provides software engineering support services for a set of open sources projects. Well, the main ones, GeoServer, MapStore, GeoNetwork, GeoNode. We are actually some of the main contributors. And in the last years, we've been supported a fair number of clients that are providing, that are building, well, STI platforms that will allow them to publish Inspire data. And well, I will share with all of you some of that knowledge we've been gaining along these years. Okay, so where are we in terms of compliance? So, well, this is a slide to provide a small slide to provide so much information. So what's GeoServer is, well, in its heart is a Java enterprise application that basically is capable of reading for a multitude of data stores, relational databases like Oracle, SQL Server, PostgreSQL, more, well, I will say not so common data store, but very useful for a few specific use cases like Apache Solr, like MongoDB, and you have also some experience going on, even reading directly from things like Azure Data Lakes. Okay, so in terms of compliance regarding Inspire, so, well, we can look at the main categories, so download services, services, transformation services. So it's possible to reach the compatibility with the Inspire norms for download services using WCS and WFS. For WMS, the compliance is also very good. We also have now WMTS, which is compatible with Inspire. In terms of transformation services, WPS reprojecting service can be used for that. And some work is still needed on the Discover services side to make it full compliant. There is also a new ongoing line of work to make the GeoServer OGC APIs implementation, specifically the feature ones capable of serving data that respects the Inspire requirements. Okay, oops, sorry. Another thing I wanted to mention is that we'll see it later where AIL jumps in, where we can use AIL with GeoServer to make our life a bit easier, and also a different direction we are taking. So in any case, GeoSolution is maintaining a plugin for AIL, so we name it GeoServer App Schema plugin. Is now available at this website. You can download it and install it directly using the nice UI of AIL. I just wanted to put this note here. Okay, so now let's have a better look at the GeoServer Inspire compliancy. How does this work in practice? So the first thing to know is that, well, Inspire is an extension of GeoServer, so it's an extension that we need explicitly to download and install on GeoServer. And it will basically provide a few new UIs where we can configure our metadata, we can link to relevant metadata, and behind the scenes it will also inject the necessary Inspire metadata to make the services compliant. In terms of download services, as I say, we have WFS, WCS, and now we have also OGC API features that will come in the next months. In terms of use services, we have WMS, we have WMTS, and on the transformation service, we have WPS with the reproject process. That's pretty much it. So basically, for each service, for each layers, we need to go to the GeoServer UI and configure a bit of metadata. Now, things start to get a bit more serious when we actually need to read from a bunch of data sources, and then we have to comply with the target schema. And here there is two situations. So we have the situations where those data stores are already in place. So it will be really hard to change those data stores to, for example, to flatten the data or doing things like that. Why? Because there is already a bunch of systems that are writing to those data stores, and so changing the structure will require changing them or adding some middle process that will do the transformation on the fly. But this is also usually bearing several issues and takes a bite on the robustness of the system. And then we have the other option, where actually you are starting from scratch, so you can change the structure, you can simplify your data. In that case, well, GeoServer will allow you to directly read from there and to publish the data you need. For the other use cases, so the most complex one, you'll need application schema. Okay, so application schema will give you the full power to read from a multitude of data stores, to define the mappings between that data store and, well, the target schema you have. There is a lot of discussion going on lately if we actually need mappings, if you need mappings. Well, the answer is pretty simple. If the data stores you have doesn't match, or at least is very close to the target schema you are expecting at the end, some mapping needs to be done. Well, either that, or you actually need to change the data store structure. But then if you have a new target schema too much, you'll need to republish again the data you have. So if you have a complex structure, you need to match a complex schema. Some mapping will need to be done somewhere. On the GeoServer world, this is done with application schema and with the help of Hail, which provides a very nice UI to define those mappings. Okay, so what does it mean in practice? Let's say we have, well, a common use case, a relational database with a few tables. In this case, we have 3 tables, station, observation, parameters, and we need to comply to a GML schema. So, well, what basically app schema allows us to do is, once to define those mappings, we'll be able to read that data, to publish the expected format, but also to be able to understand queries, efficiently delegate them to the relational database and get only the needed data. This is fundamental once we start to publish the data and once it starts being used by platforms that are actually used to provide, an information system to the public. A lot of requests meet performance issues, meet robustness issues, etc. Okay, oops. So a mapping file.
3 minutes, more or less.
Thank you, Jordi.
Thank you.
So mapping file looks a bit like this. So, well, ironically, is an XML file too. For big use cases, this is, well, not the easiest thing to do. This is where Hail UI jumps in to allow us to do the mappings on Hail and then to perform an automatically export to GeoServer. To allow us to automate a bit the process. Okay, I wanted to mention a bunch of latest improvements we had. Those improvements resulted from real use cases that, well, so one of them is the Berger and borehole use cases. This is a very interesting data set because it has a significant amount of data and it comes from several migrations. So it was published on WFS 2.0. It actually was published at some time on WFS 3.0, at least on the demo server. And now we are also working on it, on making it OGC API features compatible. It contains 2 views, simple features, complex features, so very simple attributes with very nested data. And well, in this case, we actually needed also a JSON output, so some automatically derivative rules were defined. So where we have the GML mapping and automatically we create JSON on the fly, and you can query that data set targeted JSON. We also wanted to experiment a bit with ontologies, so how to define JSON LD. Here there was a game changer because instead of defining the mappings between the data store and a target schema, okay, we let GeoServer do its job, which is reading a lot of metadata from the database, reading the target schema, produce some in-memory model, and then basically we just have a template where what we see is what we get. So this is what I want my JSON LD to look like, and I basically just put placeholders for the properties I want to see here. It's the job of GeoServer to interpret this and to put things in the right place. So in the output, it will look a bit like this. For example, here, we wanted to encode the geometries in a very specific manner. So we say, look, the geometry comes from this property in memory, and then apply this specific format. And here we go. We got what we need in the output. Very interestingly, we can as well querying those data sets referring directly the JSON LD properties. Another very interesting use case, because it uses a radically different technology, is from the Norwegian Public Roads Administrations, where all the data sets are stored in MongoDB. So this makes the system a bit faster when querying, and this is not only used for WFS, but also for visualizations with WMS. Okay.
1 minute.
Okay, thank you, Jordi. A lot of improvements were done lately. So isolated workspaces now are working full speed. We can name the layers the way we want. So all the issues related with this have been fixed. I know this was blocking a few use cases. It's also now very easy to map a list of statics objects. So we can directly map them on application schema, and they will be nicely displayed on the output and be queryable. Okay, very quickly, a few improvements we have. So we want to go into the directions where this initial mapping is done automatically by your server. And what we do is not the mapping, is actually in the end, basically for each outputs, we can define a template where what we see is what we get. So it's a type of mapping, because as I said before, we need to have a mapping somewhere. It's just a nicer mapping. Instead of mapping 10,000 attributes, we just map the ones we need. For example, we can have different JSON outputs. The flattered one, it will work. The ones that fully comply with some specific needs, it will work. So that's one of the directions. And the other direction is to create a smart app schema data store, which will do a few smart things and will actually be more interactive with the user. Ask which data to prune, and then we'll produce that initial local internal mapping, and then basically the end user will work again on the expected output format. So only focus on the attributes that are needed and the format that is exactly needed. And that's all I have to say.
So thank you very much, Nuno. So we will go to the next speaker because we are running out of time. So next speaker is Peter Baumann, which will be presenting on the Rasterman Data Cube Engine. So Peter, the floor is yours. So take the lead.
Yes, Jordi, thank you very much for introducing me. I'm going into share mode. And so by now my screen should be visible, which is a mess as always. So let's go into presentation mode. And now you should see full screen. Please complain if something is not visible. So it's great to be here and to mix with the folks that are interested in Inspire and contribute from this or that direction. We have seen powerful tools that help us a lot with metadata and also with feature data. Now it's time for the coverages specifically. So you may know, we all know that coverages are strange beasts and they pose specific challenges, not the least due to their size, but also other difficulties. Inspire actually in its download service has decided that it goes for WCS and SOS. I'm focusing on WCS because it has more functionality on coverages. And there the WCS2 core is mandatory. The core actually is very simple. WCS core says you can deliver or you can request a full coverage. Maybe you don't want that because it's too big. So you can request a subset in space and time. And you can request it in your favorite format, period. That's all. So it's very easy to oversee. From the universe of WCS core and extensions, actually the WCP Web Coverage Processing Service was chosen as an additional optional component because that offers an open-ended analysis language, analysis, visualization, extraction, and also data fusion. So that is something a vendor could provide additionally to complement the Inspire service. Actually, if we look into the WCS2 core specification, you find way down requirement 34 that the workhorse, the get coverage request, shall deliver a coverage as per OGC. That is actually CIS, the coverage implementation schema. And so actually Inspire download services by way of indirection rely on the OGC CIS standard, which is a good thing because this way we can use vanilla implementations and we don't need to have Inspire specific implementations for coverages. Now, of course, the big question always is, and what about the Inspire metadata? Well, actually, WCS offer and the coverages offer ways to extend in a canonical way. Canonical meaning that it remains compatible and it can be served again by vanilla servers. One of these items is the metadata component that can carry literally anything. So you can have one or many metadata records that are contained in there, and that is the good place to also have the Inspire metadata in there. There is some discussion because the original original definitions do not exactly make that clear. If you want to know more about that, right after this webinar, we have another one that is specifically devoted to coverages and will show you a lot of insights and live demos, among others relying on this Inspire demonstration. This, by the way, has been done by a team where I'm proud to be a member of, and Inspire experts are there, like, for example, Jordi, our facilitator today. Actually, it has been started first with GeoServer, but then they ran into difficulties and switched over to Rasterman to have the service that you now can see readily under that URL. Okay, that actually utilizes Rasterman, standing for Raster Data Manager. Now, this is actually a data cube engine, allowing you to model data cubes and also to have them actionable, to do something with them, extract, download, process, do fusion, do combination. Now, you may say, oh, I don't have four-dimensional weather data cubes or so. Okay, data cube is a generic principle. It's not 3D or 4D, but it allows you to handle all coverage data via the same mechanism. So one principle, one API is sufficient for all of them. You don't need to extend in the future. Rasterman stands out as being, first of all, the first data cube engine historically. It's a full stack implementation that puts particular emphasis on scalability through multi-parallel distributed processing. The access here is always done through OGC standards. So WMS, WCS, WCPS, plus some extensions that are practically meaningful, are practically relevant, and that might also find their way into standardization at some time. The whole thing is in operational use on more than 20 petabytes of Copernicus data with a Sentinel archives. And it has demonstrated Inspire readiness, and that is something you can try out yourself, actually. And I'm emphasizing that these coverages also contain metadata. Rasterman is coming in a dual license model. Rasterman community is free and open source. It's actually an OSGeo project, reference implementation, and also the blueprint for standards like the SQL Data Cube extension. Rasterman Enterprise offers the same interface, but adds in scalability features in all kind of directions. Okay, and yes, we have we are happy that this work has been acknowledged with a series of innovation awards, German Dean Standardization Innovation Award last year, but also US Tech Connect Innovation Award and others. And bottom left, you see the visitors that come to rasterman.org. So you see, it's well known, and actually we have about 38,000 downloads currently. Okay, for admin, yep, for administration, web-based server control, okay, ingestion and data cube buildup is automatic and can use one of more than 110 formats, which obviously are available also for output. Parallelization and distributed processing we do by splitting queries and sending the subqueries to other data centers, and that allows us actually to do federation that is fully location transparent. And now, yeah, I'm talking about query languages, but I know that many don't like that. So actually, there are lots and lots of clients that can be utilized. And so the users can remain in the comfort zone of their well-known tools. Map navigation, virtual globes, WebGIS, or high-end analysis via Python and R. Okay, so all together, sometimes I get asked, and what data do you provide? And I have to say, sorry, no data. We provide the software. And that, if the data providers install it, gives a new service quality, because instead of millions of scenes, you just see one object, like Sentinel-1, DataCube, or Sentinel-2, or your national mosaic, whatever. It is mature and easy to set up and scale up, and so it doesn't need many resources. In particular, small enterprises enjoy that. Open standards in this case means seamless IT integration, and security. We can protect such pixel sets down to the level of single pixels, and also can provide quota and billing, so that you cannot just download terabytes. For the users, that means I have performance for interactive view and analysis on big data. I can ask any query anytime and on any size. And via the federation, I actually have access not only to one data provider, but to a network of data providers, and I don't care where the data sit. And open standards in this case translates into familiar tools. So here's an outlook, what we are doing currently in a collaboration with Jülich Research Center, German Weather Service and others, machine learning for localized rain forecast in mountainous areas. And the approach is to combine machine learning with data cubes to scale it up and to combine, as you can see, a variety of different data sources here. And the final thing I want to bring to your door is the Earth Server Data Cube Federation, where exactly such a lineup of data centers is there, where you send the query anywhere and the federation will figure out how to answer your request. So you get the final results. If you want to see that live, then once again, please join us in the next one. And for now, thank you for your attention and giving back to Jordi.
So thank you very much, Peter, and thank you very much for keeping very good on time. So now I will take the floor and we are just changing to the next section of the workshop, which is the example. We have an example today about INSPIRE reference data use on feeding data to a tool for European container freight routing. From the ILR company, and our speaker today is Giordano Colombi and his colleague Roman Heimgartner. So Giordano, you have the role of presenter, so please share your screen.
Can you hear me?
Now it's okay.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
So
let me just.
I think you have to use this third button on the bottom.
Yeah, I'm using it.
Okay.
What about now?
No.
Okay. Let me just jump back in 1 second.
Maybe I can share your slides.
I will be back in 2 seconds probably, and it will work. In case it won't, I let you share the screen, but let me just give a try.
Okay.
Actually, we just saw your login window, so maybe you were sharing just the login window and not the screen.
What about now?
We see your screen, yes. I can see the title. You're running an Apple device, obviously,
Okay.
but you have a gray screen. And now the slides are coming up.
Okay.
Perfect. Let me just jump at the beginning. Okay.
So thank you, Giordano. Go
Sure.
on.
And first of all, I want to thank the INSPIRE community for giving us the opportunity to be here and present our experience. I'm Giordano, and I'm here with my colleague Roman, and we will guide you towards a brief presentation about our experience, our data user experience with the INSPIRE data platform. Let me just give you a glimpse about Ailer. At Ailer, we are mainly working around 2 supply chain axes, structural innovation and digital visibility. And in our use case, we will focus on the latter. So basically, we will talk about our try to improve the digital visibility in the supply chain. To do so, we need a lot of logistic environment data. And here is where INSPIRE could come out to play and help us. From a business perspective, the information flow, so that the data, could impact our shipment. First of all, because the data itself can act as a decision maker for container management, and also because the data would allow us to release a bit of stress on the ecosystem. The example that we will bring in this presentation is focused on the routing problem. What is the routing problem in our case? So basically, we need to ship something from a point A to a point B, and we would like to know the shortest or safest, or maybe even the more environmental route between the starting and the ending point. From a technical point of view, what we are supposed to do is to build a graph and make the starting and the final point connected. The bottleneck here is that the solution to this problem is only as good as the data. That means that we need some data requirements that we need to match in order to then being able to develop the algorithm. And as you can see in this slide, basically, we have three main data requirement axes that are like geodata, connectivity, and harmonization. Because we need information about the location, such that the coordinates, but then we need to make them connected so that we need to know how to go from one point to another by means of the distances, times, speed limitation, and whatever. And finally, maybe we need also to augment this data in order to provide a better estimation in the end. In this slide, we present our ideal data user journey through the Inspire platform. So starting from our data requirement, we would like to be able to go to the platform, perform our searches in English, get some data set out of our searches that are known thanks to a good documentation. And thanks to this documentation, we can get information not only about the format, but also about the scopes of the database. And this is actually the ground for any data science problem. If this is well set down, then it's like easier to proceed with the analysis and with the implementation. And the key point here is like the data mapping, because once we are able to get the data, and the data is in a good format in which we can perform the analysis, we are then able to map the data to our scope, to persist it in a database, to link, to augment it, and finally to build the graph.
Right. Thanks, Giordano. Roman speaking. So let me zoom in a bit more into like one particular example that we've been through, following a bit like the ideal journey we had in mind. So we wanted to map the rail network in Germany. Why Germany? Because it's central for container shipping, and there is quite a lot of open abundant data. Speaking about data, how do we get it? We go to the Deutsche Bahn website, and it's there, so we download it. First, we have to understand what's in there, so the format, the scope, the fields, and here we start to feel the first hurdles about language. So we speak a bit of German, but not enough to be able to understand everything perfectly. Now it's time to inspect what we've downloaded. Unfortunately, we couldn't find a lot of documentation, and so this is slowing down a bit the process. What's next? So we plot the data, we inspect it visually. This is quite easy, and then we need to go through the crucial step, which is mapping. So we need to take this data and map it into a graph. And a graph, if it's not properly connected, if you don't connect the dots properly, then you cannot route through the whole graph. And digging a bit more into the data set in step 6, you can see that we have a lot of data, but it's often poorly connected, which means that some segments we cannot go through, and that might prove problematic if we look at the whole picture of the path finding. So all in all, there is a lot of data, it's accessible, documentation is limited, and which makes it a bit tougher to get to the point of having a graph that we can apply our algorithms to. This is the MVP that we could come to using both internal data and data we've found on the Inspire platform, such as the Germany rail network. So how does it work? As input, you supply the point of departure as well as the point of destination. So for that particular example, it would be Lisbon to Helsinki. And then you pick which mean of transport you want to allow. In our case, we wanted to check for the most ecological ones. So we only allowed sea, rivers, and train transportation, basically. And last but not least, you have to pick a parameter to optimize for. We choose distance. And then you can see we apply, we build our graph as stated before, and we apply our algorithm, and we find the shortest route between the 2 points. A key thing to notice here is that we have two parameters that are crossed, that are struck through, which is time and cost. And this is because we couldn't find enough information in the global way, in the global sense. For instance, such as like train schedules, just to give one example, to properly be able to optimize for those parameters for that long of the journeys. Zooming out a bit, our perspective on using the Inspire Data platform, as well as the data, more in a raw way, is that it's a great facilitator for our work. So there is data, it's centralized, it's maintained, it's accessible. In most cases, it's quite open. And it's also, we could find global data sets, as in the European point of view. However, when using the search engine, we could feel some limitations that basically slowed down the process, didn't make it impossible, but make our work tougher, especially like language issues. That's something we noticed. Sometimes like documentation is not easily accessible, or it's not translated, just to name a few of the things we noticed. And if we zoom out just a bit more and think about data more in the general sense, so our vision at Taylor is that open data and data in general stimulates innovation. In our case, it's mostly about the supply chain and the transport infrastructure. And we really think it provides a fertile ground for innovation. And how is that? It's because good data, usable data, allows to provide simple solutions to complex problems. Yeah, for instance, if we think about like this question, how can I know if it's cheaper to route my container by sea? And if it's more expensive, can this cost be balanced by the amount of CO2 I'm not emitting? Quite hard to wrap our mind around this one. But actually, with the proper data and a very simple algorithm, we can easily provide quantitative answers to that question. And eventually, if data is handled by public organizations and there is a common effort to make it accessible and usable, we believe it provides for a fairer and more competitive market by reducing the barrier to entry and allowing good products to survive and not like people with the higher workforces. And we really believe that in Europe, Inspire can be the cornerstone of those data platforms to provide digital transformation in the supply chain in particular.
2 minutes.
Yes. And we're actually coming to the end of our presentation. So we would like to thank you all for your attention, and please do not hesitate to contact us and share any questions or comment, feedback you would have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giordano and Roman. So I think we are going now to the share my screen. Okay, so we are going to the next presenter. So it's finished the program now. So we will run the questions on Slido. First, the questions for presenters, and then we will revise the results of the poll. So Anya, so can you take the role?
We have overall 5 questions on Slido. We do not have any questions here in the chat. Thank you for participating in the poll and having questions. So first we have a question for Thierry. Is the IMADNet data Inspire compliant apart from the data? I think that Thierry already answered the question. Is that?
Well, I guess so, unless we want more precision. I must say, well, the answer was that both the individual data and the DTM product have been tested against the Inspire metadata validator service provided by the Inspire community.
Okay.
If that answers completely the question, I guess so.
Thanks for the amendment. Then a question for Torsten about the data ecosystem. Which features are you facing for your software?
Yeah, of course, that's a very interesting question. And for us, the main question that underlies that is what would make a data ecosystem successful? And usually you can kind of see where we currently are. I'm not sure many of you might know Indiana Jones when they have the Ark of the Covenant, and at the very end of the film, they put that in this gigantic space with millions of other boxes. And that's, in my view, kind of the situation that we often have with things like Inspire. So there are millions of data boxes in the environment, but we want to make sure that they are actually really useful. They are applied to the problems, yeah, that people are really easily able to find what's relevant to them, what changes, that the licenses are clear, and so on. And so there's 3 or 4 things that we focus on in the development of that. And one is that we, on the one hand, have tools that give feedback to the data providers about how their data is used and what is used, so that they can refine the data sets as necessary. A second aspect is about having really clear license conditions with a focus, of course, on open data licenses or on standard licenses where that's not possible, that ideally enable an automated use, like, for example, paying for a certain number of API calls, that kind of model. And the third larger block is to notify potential users of trends and changes in data. So if you as a user have shown that you're interested in certain subjects, then the system can basically go beyond an active search or a passive search from the system's perspective and actively suggest what kind of data you should look at and what might be better suited, or basically learning from your usage patterns what other data is maybe relevant or better suited for you. That's kind of the context, yeah, in which we are going there.
Thank you, Torsten. Vlado, I have a question. We are running out of time. Do we have 5 minutes more, or?
Sure. No problem. Just go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have a question for, I guess, for the presentation about GeoServer. This is, are the Inspire encoding rules for GeoJSON implemented in Hail Connect? Maybe this is also for Torsten or for Nuno.
Well, I think it's more for Torsten, since it's about Hail. Well, so in GeoServer, yes, they're implemented. There is actually no, let's say, official rules for GeoJSONs. They are still under discussion, but when they will be finished, yes, they will be available on GeoServer.
Yeah, the situation is very similar for us. So the official, well, there's no official Inspire encoding rule for GeoJSON, and there is a GeoJSON support in Hail Studio, first and foremost, but it is not completely aligned to the current specification. And it's something that we would like to do more development work on, first in Hail Studio, basically implementing the model transformations directly in Hail Studio so that the output is fully compliant to the proposed encoding rule. And after we've done that, then it would also be added to Hail Connect. So it's planned for the remainder of this year. And for those who are interested in contributing to that in one form or another, or getting to know what's going on there's going to be a Hail Studio community planning meeting on 2nd of July. So please feel free to reach out to me if you would like to join that in some form or another.
Thanks, Torsten. And then we have a question and maybe also a plea for the last speaker, for Giordano. Does your organization have more example use cases for Inspire data, and would you be able to share them in the Inspire Community Forum? Giordano?
Yes. Can you just repeat the question? Sorry. Can you hear me, Anya?
Yeah. Does your organization have more example use cases for Inspire data, and would you be able to share them in the Inspire Community Forum?
So actually, the answer is that we, at the actual state, we just focus on the problem that we present in our discussion. But we have a lot of problem or say application that might be solved using Inspire data. So we are kind of open to maybe try data from data providers among the Inspire community and sit down together and see if there is any room for collaboration and develop some proof of concept using Inspire data. At the current state, yeah, the only thing that we have tried to do is the intermodal routing.
Just a very quick add-on from my side, Torsten here. So within the GoPack project that we also presented last week on Friday, we have collected some 17-ish use cases, and I think it might really make sense if also I think some of the project partners are online here as well, if we actually add that to the thematic clusters forum, that information.
Okay.
Yeah, this would be great, Torsten.
Yes.
Giordano, we keep in contact and see how we can put this on the forum.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
So these were the questions, and now we have the poll, the result of the polls. I hope you can see it. So we have answers.
No.
Anya, can you share the screen? So
I have shared the screen.
I'm not looking. Now.
Now it's there.
Okay.
Okay. So we have answers from 12 countries and more than 40 votes. And so you see that intermediate halfway is the status of the implementation in the countries. So there's 15% said it's underdeveloped, immature, now 17. Interesting. I have stopped the poll. Okay, then now how we go forward. So the second question was about the main obstacles, and here we have two on top. It's first of all organizational issues with 56%, scarce resources devoted to this purpose, also with 56%. Then we have some insights and hints for potential new ways of improving. We will go through these answers with Jordi, and we will think about how we can put this on the Inspire Community Forum. Many thanks for your input. So these were, if there's other ideas, describe. You'll see this one. And then we also collected some ideas for services or applications on Slido. And this is really great. So we will also put this on the forum. Thank you very much for this. And we can also publish the results from the Slido. We will do this together with the presentations. Thank you very much for your input.
Okay. I would thank you all the presenters and all the attendants. I think that the ranges for speakers today has been quite interesting, and I hope it's useful for those attending the session. And we will make our most with Anya in order to publish all these results in the Inspire Community Forum website, and I would be willing to invite all of you and your colleagues that are working in Inspire implementation in order to share any of your hopefully successful experiences or your issues in order to get feedback from the others that are facing the same problem. So I thank you all, and hope to see you in the next session about Inspire coverages, also chaired by Peter Baumann. So thank you very much from my side.
Thanks as well from my side.
Thank you. Bye bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.